What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel. Today, we're here to discuss my instant takeaways from the Packers' dominant victory over the Chicago Bears. I'm recording this. The game just ended about 90 minutes ago or so. I have the article up over at Packers Wire, and I'm going to talk through here with you guys everything that I saw, again, in my instant takeaways. But first, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel, and you can find all my work over at Packers Wire. So as I said, these are my instant takeaways, my gut reactions to what I saw take place on the football field from the Green Bay Packers. Just a bunch of quick hitters on, again, what I saw. So let's dive on in. All three phases: offense, defense, special teams. The Green Bay Packers dominated the day. Plain and simple. An area where they absolutely are going to have to improve, and I would expect them to, is with penalties. Just way, way, way too many of those. I know it's week one. Obviously, a tendency more early on in the season than later on as things progress to be sloppy. So going to chalk it up to that, but definitely an area where this Packers team has to improve. But from, each phase of the game, they asserted their dominance over the Chicago Bears team. Jordan Love, overall, I thought his performance mirrored what we saw a lot of during the summer months with the preseason and training camp practices. He was very poised in the pocket, went through his progressions, did a really, really good job of taking care of the ball, was able to buy time with his legs when needed, had some big throws in key situations, including a couple of third downs. Packers were very efficient in the red zone, going 3 for 3 there as well. On the flip side, there was a few passes that were slightly inaccurate, a couple that were off target that I'm sure he would like to have back. But overall, just a very, very solid debut from Jordan Love. And as a whole, Love and this Packers offense, they were very good on third downs. That was one of the biggest differences in this game that ended up turning it into a blowout. On third and fourth downs, the Packers were 10 of 16 in moving the chains. I already mentioned their efficiency in the red zone. And even without Christian Watson, this was an offense that was able to generate some explosive plays, and several of them came over the middle with yak potential. And that's such a key element of the Matt LaFleur offense. If you've watched any of my training camp highlight videos, that's something I talked about frequently, that with Jordan Love, we saw him attacking the middle of the field. And again, it's so important to this offense because it gets your playmakers in space, and then the opportunity to pick up yards after the catch, which we saw a lot of. There weren't, not as if Love was, delivering a ton of downfield passes, but he was completing intermediate throws over the middle. Packers have a ton of speed on the offensive side of the ball, and it led to several big plays. So just a really, really good performance from Jordan Love. Again, not all that different from what we saw from him this summer. Speaking of the summer, something that I wrote about was it just feels like there's limitless combinations for Matt LaFleur when it comes to his personnel groupings, because of the versatility that this offense has at receiver, tight end, and the running back position. There may be a lot of inexperience, but this offense is not lacking speed, and they're not lacking versatility. And we saw that on display right away. I mean, before we even got to halftime, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Ben Sims, Luke Musgrave, Josiah DeGuara, Samori Toure, Romeo Dobbs, Malik Heath, Dontavian Wicks were all on the field. Again, just limitless combinations. And what that does, or what that can do for an offense, is really stress defenses and create mismatches. Because of that versatility, the Packers are able to run a variety of plays from just a very few personnel groupings, two tight end sets, 3 receiver sets, 2 running back sets, whatever it may be. But because of that versatility, they can move guys around, ask them to take on different responsibilities. And that, again, really stresses defenses and really creates matchup problems for them as well. So that was something that was very obvious over the summer watching this team. And boom, right away, we saw it week one, a quarter in, 2 quarters in, against the Chicago Bears. Aaron Jones. I've said this before. I've written about it before. This goes back to even when Aaron Rodgers was quarterback. This offense is different when he's the focal point, when he's heavily involved. And we 100% saw that on Sunday against the Bears. The first drive, the Packers scoring drive, Aaron Jones had 5 carries for 24 yards. Packers go down and score. However, after that, he didn't get many touches. He didn't have any carries after that drive, in fact, until the start of the third quarter, where guess what? He had a 51-yard completion, ended up punching it in a few plays later on the ground. Next series had a huge touchdown catch over the middle of the field, one of those big explosive plays that were just generated over the middle with yak potential. Again, that created mismatches. You had Aaron Jones in the middle of the field, one-on-one against a linebacker. So again, that references what I was just talking about a few seconds ago. But to go back to this point, the Packers, they under the floor, they have a tendency to get away from Aaron Jones for whatever the reason may be. And historically, and by historically I mean during the LaFleur era, the second quarter is often when they lean heavily on AJ Dillon. And we know that, and LaFleur even said this after the game, it's a long season. They want to be mindful of Aaron Jones' snap count. He also added that they just weren't getting into a good rhythm, a good flow on offense to be able to set up opportunities for him to be the focal point. But to that I say, you have a first-time starting quarterback, you're missing your star wide receiver, you have a ton of inexperience at receiver. Like, just manufacture those opportunities to get him the ball. And I'm guessing that he's going to get the offense into that rhythm that Matt LaFleur said that they were looking for. So again, at the end of the day, Packers ended up running away with this one. Jones played a huge factor in them doing so. But like, for the reasons just mentioned, the young offense, all of that, I just feel like, especially when they start playing better teams, they can't go that, quarter of football, 25% of the game without their playmaker, their star on this offensive side of the ball, or one of their stars, not getting touches, not being a factor. So something that it's continually seems to be a work in progress for the team. And again, I go back to the Packers want him available for the long haul. They're always going to be mindful of his touches. But if you're stalling out, consecutive drives, 3 drives in a row like the Packers did, you think there would be a more concerted effort to get Aaron Jones some additional opportunities. On the other side of the ball, the defensive front, so good. They absolutely dominated the Bears' offensive line. One of the articles that I wrote about leading up to this week was that if the Packers got stops in the run game, you got to eat your vegetables on first and second down, they were going to have the opportunity to get after Justin Fields and this Bears offense. For one, the Bears offensive line in pass protection, they struggled at times last season. They were without Tevin Jenkins, who's, I believe, been placed on IR to start the season. And as we all know, Justin Fields has a tendency to hold on to the football. Packers pass rush is also very, very good. It's one of the strengths of this team. So the recipe was there for this unit to absolutely go and get after Justin Fields. And they did. They finished the game with 6 quarterback hits, 4 sacks. And if they weren't playing a quarterback who was so dynamic like Justin Fields was, both of those numbers would have been much, much greater. I'm very curious to see the PFF numbers when they come out on Monday of how many pressures they tallied the Packers having, because it was a ton. And while everyone seemingly got in on the action, Lucas Van Ness had a heck of a sack on Justin Fields in the red zone. Right there, boom. You saw Van Ness's athleticism, his speed on display. Because as we saw, taking down Justin Fields in the backfield is no easy task. But Devontae Wyatt, heck of a game, was consistently getting in the backfield as a pass rusher. Kenny Clark played really well as well. Carl Brooks got his first NFL sack. Again, that entire group, the interior defensive line, the edge rushers, they dominated the Chicago offensive line. And to go back to the run defense, it's because they were given the opportunities for the Bears to not dominate the game on the ground. Justin Fields was able to rip off a couple chunk runs, and that's going to happen. Again, he's so dynamic that you're not going to go a game without him, creating a few of those opportunities. But they really bottled up the Bears running backs. Khalil Herbert had less than 3.5 yards per carry, as did Devontae Foreman. Roshan Johnson averaged just 4 yards per carry. This defense was terrific. One, again, the play up front did a really good job of penetrating gaps, but also this unit, the defensive unit as a whole, just looks so much faster. Everyone flying around, swarming to the football, really, really sound tackling. So again, just an overall impressive performance from the Packers defensive front and really the offensive line as well. Matt LaFleur said after the game when he was speaking with Larry McCarron that the ability to protect Jordan Love and the ability to get after Justin Fields was a huge difference maker in this game. Of course, there's still a ton of unknowns about this Packers team. After all, it's only been one game. But their strengths, again, getting after the quarterback and offensive line play, That's going to keep them in a lot of games. If you can control the trenches, if you can control a line of scrimmage, you oftentimes can control the game. So even if they're battling inconsistencies in some other facet, the fact that they're as strong as they are in those two areas are going to keep them in a lot of football games this season and give them the opportunity to win some. We saw a much more aggressive version of Darnell Savage. Speaking of defenders flying to the football, he was all over the place. He led the team in tackles. Several of those came either at or behind the line of scrimmage. This is the version of Darnell Savage that all of us have been hoping that we were going to see. It made me think back to OTAs when safeties coach Ryan Downard was speaking with us, and he mentioned that Savage is at his best when he's just pulling the trigger. He said when he's letting it all hang out, he's just seeing, reacting, and letting his athleticism take over. And it really felt like that's what we saw on display on Sunday against the Bears. A really, really good performance from Darnell Savage. Joe Barry, will stick with the defensive side of the ball. We saw a few different blitzes from him, several of which came from either the cornerback or safety position. Jair Alexander, just as he did at the end of last season when the defense was playing its best football, he was traveling around with DJ Moore, coming out of the huddle, whatever side of the field DJ Moore went to, Jair Alexander was going there, and Moore was pretty much a non-factor in this game. Had 2 receptions, I believe, for 25 yards. Defense also did a really good job coming away with takeaways, had 2 for the game. It's going to be so crucial this season. Of course, it's always important to win the takeaway battle, but with a young offense, potential inconsistencies, points possibly being at a premium, winning the turnover battle feels like an absolute must. We have to see more from this offense, and this week was a good start, but consistently being able to overcome losing that battle is probably not something they're going to be able to do. So giving them those extra possessions to go try to put points on the board, oftentimes, of course, if you're going to come away with turnovers, it's going to lead to better field position, again, increasing your opportunities to score on offense. So overall, just a really, really sound performance from the defense, and did like what I saw from obviously not just the performance, but the game plan from this defense going into this game looked a lot like what we saw again late last season when this unit was really hitting its stride at the end. Rashawn Gary, Matt LaFleur said that he was going to be on a pitch count, and he was. Packers were using him strictly on 3rd and longs, so obvious passing situations to limit his snap count, but also where he could make a massive impact by just going and get the quarterback. And we saw him generate, comes to my mind, at least 2 or 3 pressures that he was able to get on those passing downs. Without Gary playing every snap, it was JJ Enagbare who was starting across from Preston Smith. And as we all know, Enagbare is coming off a really, really good summer. Looks like he's someone who is ready to take a big step forward in his second season. One thing I was curious about coming into the year was Keyshawn Nixon's role on special teams. I go back to the offseason where Matt LaFleur said, responsibility number 1 for him is defense. It all starts there, and then as he shows that he can handle his new starting responsibilities as a starting nickel corner, they'll expand his role potentially elsewhere. Special teams, of course, Matt LaFleur's alluded to offense a couple times. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. So with that comment, I did wonder if Nixon was not going to be the return man on kick and both punt returns, and that's what we saw. He handled kick returns, and Jaden Reed was on punt returns. And I said this from the get-go of OTAs. When you saw Jaden Reed handle his first punt return, he's just so natural doing it. And obviously we saw his dynamic playmaking ability that he brings in that role as well, the speed that he has, the ability to make guys miss in space. And, he comes to the NFL from Michigan State with almost 40 career punt return attempts there. So again, has the experience and looked really good doing it in practice. And we saw him rip off a big return against the Bears. At the tight end position, Ben Sims, who the Packers claimed off waivers from the Vikings. They released him during final roster cutdowns. Packers claimed him off waivers less than 2 weeks ago now. He was ahead of Tucker Kraft on the tight end depth chart. Luke Musgrave, Josiah DeGuara. If we're going to continue to classify him as a tight end, we're, of course, on the field first. And then it was Ben Sims. We even saw some 3 tight end sets where all 3 of those guys were on the field. But the reason they brought in Ben Sims, and when they made that addition, it made perfect sense, is because of his blocking experience. He's a rookie, just like Kraft and Musgrave are. He's navigating that steep learning curve that comes with playing the tight end position and jumping from college to the NFL. But he also has a ton of inline blocking experience from his time at Baylor. I believe PFF charted nearly 1,000 run blocking snaps while in college, and that's where this offense, or excuse me, this tight end room, needs the most help right now. Luke Musgrave's impact is going to come primarily in the passing game early on, although on an Aaron Jones run on that opening drive, he had a really nice seal block that allowed Jones to get to the second level. And then Tucker Kraft, tons of upside, but he's coming from an FCS school, and he's adjusting to the NFL. So Sims immediately had a role in this Packers offense with his blocking experience, and we saw him being utilized in that capacity right away. And he held up again on my initial viewing of the game. I thought he held up really, really well. Of note, Rasheed Walker was in the game for at least one snap as the sixth offensive lineman. A few weeks back, following the Tyler Davis injury, Matt LaFleur said that the Packers would be open to the idea of using a sixth offensive lineman on the field at times, again, because of the young tight end room that they have and the steep learning curve that often comes with that position group. And also the offensive tackle position, it's a position of strength for this Packers team. So if you can get someone like Rasheed Walker, who had a very, very good summer on the field for a few snaps in that capacity, why wouldn't you? And this is something we've seen the Packers deploy in the past. When Mercedes Lewis missed a game, they would use a sixth offensive lineman. I believe when they did that a couple of years ago, it was Rick Wagner. Lastly, Anders Carlson, heck of a debut for him as well. Ended up going 5 for 5 on extra points. Made his own field goal attempt, which is a 52-yarder, I believe. So we didn't know coming into the game what we were going to see from him. As I said in previous videos, seen him go 1 for 6 in practice. I've seen him go 6 for 6 in practice and everywhere in between. But he does seem to have that gamer mentality. And Rich Bisaccia spoke to this about him after they drafted him, saying that they just really like his big game experience. Some of Carlson's best performances this summer came in preseason games or came during family night in front of a crowded, nearly sold out Lambeau Field. He seems to, and that's what you want in a kicker, but he seems to rise to the occasion when the lights are the brightest. Now, having said all that, there's going to be missed kicks. There's going to be ups and downs to come. He's a rookie kicker. As Goody said, patience is required, but a very, very good debut for Anders Carlson. So there you have it, my friends. Those are my quick hitters, my instant takeaways from the Green Bay Packers performance against the Chicago Bears, and a dominating one at that. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. Hit like on the video. Hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel, and you can find all my work over at Packers Wire. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, and as always, go Pack Go.